All right, for those of you just waking up, starting out your morning with us, I just finished off the first hour of the program talking about Julian Edelman's video response to DeSean Jackson. We played that video for you to finish out the first hour of the program. It was incredibly well said, I thought, by Julian Edelman, and also a way to lead to a constructive dialogue as opposed to tearing people down. Now, I also said I'm not a proponent of cancel culture. Some of you out there reacting like, what does cancel culture mean? Cancel culture is, oh, somebody posted something on Facebook or Twitter or social media, or there's a video that's out there, and so as a result, they don't deserve to have a job anymore. They don't deserve to work. This has become a big thing, whether it's, hey, Kevin Hart can't host the Oscars because he made a joke over a decade ago that I'm upset about, or it's a situation where, oh, some people argued, oh, DeSean Jackson should have to be released by the Eagles. This happens all the time, and certainly sports is not immune from it when it comes to deciding what makes sense going forward. It's, in fact, a big topic of conversation in general, and I don't think we end up in a better spot by trying to pull people down and destroy them over what's going on in that respect. So all of that is a prelude. You heard the Julian Edelman video. Maybe we should actually play that Julian Edelman video for you again right here. And in fact, let's go ahead and do that, even though we rarely do it, because it's going to be a big topic of conversation with George Wrighster, who we're about to be joined by. So for those of you who heard it, you're going to hear it again. For those of you who are just starting off your morning, as many of you do, by setting up your alarms, I thought it was so well said by Julian Edelman. There's not a harm in playing it each hour on the program today. Here is that audio from Julian Edelman.
I've been getting hit up by everyone asking me about this DeSean Jackson post, and I wanted to take some time before I responded because it's a complicated issue, and I wanted to be thoughtful. I wrote down some of my thinking. I've seen DeSean play in his career, make outstanding football plays. We've communicated over social media. I've got nothing but respect for his game. I know he said some ugly things, but I do see an opportunity to have a conversation. I'm proud of my Jewish heritage, and for me, it's not just about religion. It's about community and culture as well. I'm unusual because I didn't identify as Jewish until later in my life. Whenever I encountered hatred, it never really felt like it was aimed at me. It was only after I was part of this community that I learned how destructive hate is. Anti-Semitism is one of the oldest forms of hatred. It's rooted in ignorance and fear. I remember experiencing a little bit of this hate in 2011 when I was called a on the football field. There's no room for anti-Semitism in this world. Even though we're talking about anti-Semitism, I don't want to distract from how important the Black Lives Matter movement is and how we need to stay behind it. I think the Black and Jewish communities have a lot of similarities. One unfortunate similarity is that they are both attacked by the ignorant and the hateful. It's really hard to see the challenges a community can face when you're not part of it. So what we need to do is we need to listen, we need to learn, we need to act. We need to have those uncomfortable conversations if we're going to have real change. So to that end, DeSean, let's do a deal. How about we go to D.C. and I take you to the Holocaust Museum, and then you take me to the Museum of African American History and Culture. Afterwards, we grab some burgers and we have those uncomfortable conversations. This world needs a little more love, compassion, and empathy. Take care.
All right, let me bring in George Wrighster now. George and I have a good background. We were on what I think was the best, maybe because it was the only college football Friday night preview show. Some of you may remember that back in the day. It was me, George, Bruce Feldman, Stuart Mandel, and Lindsey Theory. We had an awful lot of fun talking about college football. George played at Oregon, former NFL player as well. George, thanks for getting up early with us. I know you got a crazy crew of family that you're tracking all the time. You also host a Fox Sports radio show on Sunday, so some people may recognize your voice from that on Sundays from 2 to 5. Appreciate you getting up early with us.
Man, nothing is ever early when you haven't.
that is 100% accurate. Everybody who has young kids knows that early has an entirely different definition when you got a baby.
Yeah, exactly. You have all these kid-free people that are like, oh yeah, I'll be up around 9-ish. I'll be 9. So what do you want me to flip that 9 over and make it a 6 and then come holler at me?
I always say, and I don't blame, people without kids for saying this because they truly don't know. But when I was a kid, and I mean a kid, to me you're a kid up until you have your own kid. But I thought, man, I'm so busy now. I'm like 24 years old. I'm like 25, 26, 27. I'm like, man, I'm working so hard. But really, even if you're working a lot, until you have a kid at home and you have a responsibility for someone other than yourself for 24 hours a day, you really ain't busy, right? So for everybody out there who's young and listening right now, starting off their day, it's Friday, you're going into the weekend, you're like, man, I've had such a busy week. Yeah, but you don't have anything you're responsible for on Saturday or Sunday. If you got kids, you know what I'm talking about. So George and we did the show together. So you've watched the Julian Edelman video. You've seen the fallout of DeSean Jackson. Are you as impressed by the direction that Julian Edelman took the conversation as I am?
Yeah, of course, dude. Like I feel like he's been listening to the things that I've been trying to communicate to people for a while, because there's so many people that wanted to call for DeSean Jackson's job and all of this. But when I see racism out in the world, or people say crazy things, a lot of it is an education issue. It's everything from geography to things.
Sorry, I said amen. Yeah. I was being your core. I was being your chorus there. I was your choir for the minute. Yeah, you're right. Keep going.
That a lot of it is an education issue. That people were taught things when they grew up, and if you just say, okay, we're going to cancel people, they have no path to redemption, no way to fix themselves, like that's the wrong thing. Because if you just exile people and cast them away, you actually reinforce their beliefs, and you actually don't fix the problem. So, but I do believe when it comes to the cancel culture, a lot of times that you do have to remove people from leadership. Like if you're in a leadership position where you have an effect on people's lives, and you clearly did something that was wrong, like the election official in Mississippi, where she comes on and goes on Facebook and says, okay, well, look, all the blacks are voting. So the real people of Mississippi, they need to get out and vote. You're like, what? Hold on, time out. So when you are in a position of power, I do believe that there is a removal process that may need to happen if you are found to be like redlining or doing something inconsistent with the values of your job. But you should have a path to redemption. And a quick story before I get to the Julian Edelman thing. I'm publishing an article on Unafraid show about a guy I played with at Oregon, and he was a racist. I had no idea. He was from a big city, everything. And my junior year, he sat me down. We were just in the locker room all by ourselves. He comes up to me. He's like, George, dude, like, it's so crazy to me. So I grew up around skinhead and Aryan Nation people, and they told me all these things about black people, about Jewish people, about, people of different colors and races, how they were beneath us and we were so much better. I came up here and was around so many different people, and I learned that there are two types of people. There are good people and there are bad people. And that I've been around some of the most hardworking, dedicated black people that I've seen, and some white guys that I've been around are just losers and lazy. So he was like, so I figured out there's good people and bad people despite what I've been taught. So I gave him the ultimate test. I said, would it be okay, since you've had this awakening, would it be okay if one of us married your daughter? And he said, you know what, to be honest, George, I would have always said no. But now I would prefer it because it would be easier for my family if she did marry somebody white. However, at the end of the day, I want her to be with a good dude. So if I will battle my family for a good guy, but at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. So instead of him being, and he's actually, I'm not going to say his job now because I don't want him to be canceled by
yeah,
people.
Right.
Yeah, is that this dude turned out to be a good guy, but it was because of what he was taught, and he had to unlearn it. So imagine if he were fired from his job or he were kicked out of the university for that. Like I do think that that you're not free from consequences from things that you say, but there has to be a path back for people. That way, then you can say, all right, the only way to make the world a better place is to educate those people. And that leads me to Julian Edelman, which his response was proper. It was smart. It was actually something that was important because you can acknowledge that there is a problem. But if DeSean Jackson, who was clearly ignorant about, not an ignorant person, but ignorant in terms of lack of knowledge about the subject, about who said what he was saying, I mean, all of that. And so the only way to find empathy and understand where somebody else is coming from, which actually is most times the dividing line between people, they just have these preconceived notions. And Julian Edelman reached out and he also saved DeSean Jackson in a way and was like, look, let's fix this problem. And I loved what Julian Edelman had to say.
I mean, I love everything about it. And you hit on a lot of things that I also agree with, which is there's a difference between oftentimes what people have experienced and what the reality of life is, right? And so the locker room, specifically where you referenced, this is why sports can be so important, right? Because in this day and age, I mean, I grew up in a K through 12 public school environment where there were kids from all different races and backgrounds, and that's important when you are young to be able to experience that, and I think it stays with you for the rest of your life, and you learn important lessons about not judging people based on whatever stereotypes might be out there. But a lot of kids go to segregated schools now, right? I mean, you can grow up in a neighborhood and you can be only around black kids, or you can be only around white kids. In some places now, you can only be around Hispanic kids and Asian kids. Whatever your lifestyle is can seem completely normal, and you can be surrounded by people who only look and think like you, which is why sports is oftentimes very important, because if that guy didn't happen to have the talent to play sports or hadn't played sports, he might not have ever met you and other people in that locker room. And the important thing is here, getting to know people beyond surface level interaction, right? Because surface level interaction creates differences. Getting to know people on a personal level creates similarities, right? And so what you are speaking of is the best benefit that can often come from sports, which is everybody in a locker room is pulling in the same direction, even though in theory they may have cosmetic differences.
Yeah, and my the one of the biggest things I've learned is the difference in the locker room and just in life is that people's histories and their experiences don't always match up. Like, for instance, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, lived there till I was 8 years old. And my first experience with the Confederate flag was I was driving down the street with my auntie. I was about 6 years old. This dude in a pickup truck with flags flying out the back starts yelling N-words at me. And I'm like, bro, what? And I'm a little kid. And you learn at that point in time that I was taught at that point in time from that experience and other ones that flag meant a danger to me. So when we look at, but then as I've grown up and learned, I've learned that, okay, that there are people who grew up in the South who have positive reflections of that flag, of their grandfathers, of their fathers, their great-grandfathers, and that it probably is very difficult to reconcile how they treated you. You know what I mean? Like that you had all these positive memories of Dixie and all this. But then you go and then you realize, like, hold up, like, were these people out here treating people like trash? but they treated my family well, but doing these other things. So I think it's hard for people to reconcile that. Like I realized, like I had a great relationship with my grandfather, and my dad never let me know when I was young or tainted my relationship with him. But as I got older, I learned that him and my dad had my grandfather was actually like a scumbag for a long time, like a philanderer, beating people, all of this stuff. And so it like messed me up for a minute because I was like, that's not the man that I knew. So to understand that people have layers and that you can be okay with saying, all right, look, this flag is terrible for other people and has a different connotation. And maybe I need to look at, like, I can still have positive memories, but that reflection to other people may not be the representation that I want to represent out in the world.
We're talking with George Wrighster right now. Can you come back and hang out with us for another segment?
Yeah, absolutely.